So for the last few months, I've been asking my friends that work for nonprofits, how do you feel about your software? And they've responded with frustration, venting, irritation. They're not thrilled with their software, and this pains me. I love software. I'm a software connoisseur. Software is the most powerful tool invented in like the last few centuries. I also love nonprofits. They're doing good in the world, like Daryl said. They're good people, they're doing good work, and to me it just makes sense. They should get to use the best tools to do the good work. For some reason, they're not. There's something missing. The software is not speaking to the nonprofits, and in many cases it's doing more harm than good. And I think that software wants to be your friend. And I do too. My name is Ted. I've spent the last 10 years building software and dashboards for nonprofits. Today I'm going to talk about how we got here, why so many nonprofits are frustrated with software, the history of software, very brief, why they're so frustrated, 5 things that we can do to be better, and 1 tangible thing you can do today to get better with software. That's what we're going to talk about. First, how did we get here? I'm going to take you back to August 24th, 1995. $300 million marketing campaign for a global launch of a product. There were midnight releases in stores all over the world. I'm sure you know what the product is. It's Windows 95. They sold millions and millions of copies in 4 days, and for many people around the world, this was their first time using a personal computer, not using it at work, but using it at home. It was even I was 6. It was my first time. Our family got a computer. It was the first time I used a computer. Windows 95 was my introduction to computing. I want to point out a couple things. First, software used to be sold in boxes at stores. Second, it used to be released in years. The release cycle was over years. So this was Windows 95. It was followed by Windows 98 3 years later. Windows 2000, Vista, XP. You might remember that pattern, but it took years for new software to be released. So when you bought Windows 95, it was baked, it was done, and then you would use it as long as you wanted. And Microsoft would try to persuade you to upgrade 3 years later. And lastly, people used to wear bandanas and lots of layers. So Windows 95 is released. That same year, a bookseller sells $14 million of books online. It was called Amazon. About a year after that, Google transformed search with a white screen and a little rectangle box that you can type any question you have and they'll find an answer for you. What Amazon and Google did is they transformed technology at this moment. Microsoft said you have to buy our software in a box at a store. Amazon and Google said you don't even need software, you just need an internet connection and a browser. They're free. You can go to Amazon.com, you can go to Google.com, and we'll answer any question for you in the world. And so they extended what was possible in the browser, and that was led by high, quick, fast internet speeds. Lastly, in 2000, in the wake of Y2K, a company called Salesforce launched their software with a marketing campaign called The End of Software. That was this really splashy marketing campaign. And essentially what they were saying is, no more buying software in a box. No more buying it at a store. You go to this website, you sign up, you give us your credit card, and instead of buying software that has to be updated every 3 years, it's going to be updated all the time. You'll never pay for another upgrade. You're just going to pay us per user, per month, and you'll always have the best software and it will always be up to date. They created the new business model called software as a service. You might be familiar with it. It's short, people call it SaaS. Over the next 2 decades, this business model would grow like this. So this is billions of dollars in sales from 2008 to 2020. Some of these are projections. It doesn't go back quite as far as I wanted, but essentially you get the picture. It's a gold rush of money towards companies that sell software as a service where you pay monthly and you often pay per user. So this is what happened. So what does this mean for nonprofits? So let's take an example. A nonprofit does $500,000 in revenue. They have 7 employees. A third of the revenue comes from grants, maybe another third from donations, and then maybe another third from services. Maybe they host trainings or events or something like that. How much software would you need to run this nonprofit? To start, you'd need a workspace software. You'd either need G Suite, Microsoft 365, that's for email, calendar, spreadsheets, documents. You need a website. so that people know that you exist and believe that you're a credible organization. You might use Squarespace, Wix, WordPress. You'll need a tool like Canva because you have a brand. Since you have a website, you have logo, font, colors, branding, that kind of thing. You'll probably use a tool like Canva. Since you're a real serious organization and you keep your books in order, you're going to have accounting software. So you'll probably use QuickBooks or Xero or ZipBooks. And since you have 7 employees, you have to do payroll. So you're going to need to use Gusto or maybe a QuickBooks payroll module. Since you take donations online through your website for a third of your revenue, you need to use Stripe or DonorBox so that you can take people's credit cards. And since you host events or training and you need people to come, you need a place for them to register. So you might use Google Forms, which is free, but if you charge for it, which I should have done for this event, by the way, that would have been a better thing to do, you would use something like Eventbrite. If you let them pay in person for that event, like you sell tickets to like a gala or something like that, you'll need a point of sale system like Clover or Square. You've probably seen these at every coffee shop you've ever been to. And if you manage grants, so you're applying for grants, you have to host events, you have to plan all these different projects, you need a project management tool. So you might use Asana or Trello or ClickUp. And if you get grants, you have to track your time so that they know where the grant went to. So you're going to have to use Toggle or Clockify. And the crown jewel of software, you're going to need to manage all of these customers somewhere in some place. And so you're going to need a CRM, a customer relationship management software. So you're going to use DonorPerfect or HubSpot or the OG of OGs, Salesforce. And like that's so much software. And there's like so much more that you're probably also using. You probably use Slack or Zoom or MailChimp or Calendly. This is a lot. I got a little bit tired going through this slide. It took me a whole day to find all these logos. How are you going to choose? Like which ones? Like that only took a second, but like it takes a lot longer to choose which ones of these, because you got to think about it. Some of these have to integrate. A lot of these are competitors. Stripe is a competitor to Square and Clover. Which one are you going to use? They're not going to make that as easy to integrate as you would like, and probably their marketing says. There's going to be so many choices that you're going to have to make in here, and this is going to take a lot of time to build this. How does this feel? If you're running a nonprofit and you have $500,000 in revenue, 7 employees, it feels like a lot. It feels overwhelming, and it feels like maybe it's too much. A couple other things it probably feels like. Not only do you have a lot of software, the software always changes. Used to be, you get the software and you got 3 years and it doesn't change. Now, it changes all the time. They release new features every month. Most software releasing 10 new features is not very much, and they'll release them every single month. So if you do that over the course of a year, that's 100 new features a year. Most of that's noise. You don't need most of that stuff, but you have to either ignore it or you have to sift through it. And if you only used one software, maybe you can manage, but you have 10. That's thousands of new features a year that you're just inundated with. And all that's doing is creating complexity for you. And you have to do something. You can ignore most of it, but you have to respond to it because your team is going to go wild and use the stuff that they want to use. So you have to have some sort of coordination or it gets overwhelming. So it's always changing. Another thing about this, it's always moving away from us. Because we're small nonprofits, the way software companies make money is they get started and they grow and they grow and they grow and they charge per user per month. Where are the users? They're at the enterprises. That's where you find the most users. And so software will move away from you. Not only does it always change, but if you stay a small nonprofit, like less than 100 employees, which is huge, that's a small nonprofit, the software is going to move away from you. Second, remember that revenue chart, money just going up. What that means is there's new entrants into the market constantly. So I picked 10. Maybe I put 30 logos on the screen. I could have put 1,000. There's 1,000 companies that you could have chosen for to build that tech stack. There's constantly new alternatives. So the software you have is changing, the ground's shifting under your feet, and new people are coming in constantly. Okay, what can we do about it? There's 5 things that we can do about it. First, we're gonna have to get Zen. We have to accept change. I'm sorry. I wish I could say we could freeze it. I wish we could stop it. Sometimes I feel I love technology, and sometimes I want to go back. Like, could we just pause for 3 years and you guys not touch this? Because this is fine, just the way it is. It's going to continue to change, and it's probably going to accelerate. And we got to accept that. The window of utility is brief. Because software is changing and because it's moving away from us, we have to accept that we're going to have to change it. The software we pick today is probably not the software we need 5 years from now. It's not just because the software is changing. You all are changing. You're a squirrely bunch. Your process changes. Your funding model changes. You change as well. And so we've got two moving things going on. And I think our perception of software is that this is a fixed, solid ground I can stand on. And that's not the reality. You are wobbly and change. You're squirrely, and software is the same way. They're both two moving things, and we have to adapt to that. I would suggest that you reconsider every time you add a tool to your tech stack. Write that date down and put a reminder in your calendar for 3 years from now. Be like, hey, is this tool still working? And then maybe you should cancel it, keep using it, or find an alternative, because by that time, 5 new alternatives will have popped up at least. There's so much new software being made, you can always reconsider. So that was number one. Number two, define your process. Don't let software tell you what to do. Don't let them decide. They don't know you. You have to say, here's how we're going to use software because it works for us. And you have to be specific. So there's this framework called the So That framework. I think I learned it from Leanna Patch. I don't know where she said she learned it from. Let me give you an example. You might say, we have donors, we have funders, we need a CRM. That's good. You're onto something there. I like that thinking. It's not very specific though. So we need a CRM so that we can manage relationships. Okay, we're getting closer, but it's called customer relationship management software. So it's still not specific enough. Let's go like one more deeper here. We need a CRM so that we can touch base with our donors every 3 months. Now we're getting somewhere. This is important. The reason we have this is because we forgot about that one donor that one year, didn't talk to them, and then they forgot to give, and that was very painful. And so now we have a rule in our organization where we touch base with our donors every 3 months. That's really good. Let's see if we can get a little bit more specific. We need a CRM so that we can set automated reminders to connect with our donors because we're not going to forget. We cannot forget again. And the automated reminders will help us remember. We'll get an email or what have you. What we've done is we've gotten really specific about our process. The CRM didn't tell us that we needed this. We told ourselves that we needed this. We're using the tool for our process. What I would suggest before you buy any tool, find 5 of these. We need a CRM with automated reminders, with this sort of certain automation, with this sort of certain integration. Those are not specific. You guys have to be more specific than that. And then you have a Google search that looks something like CRM for small nonprofits that has automated reminders and integrations instead of 1,000 CRMs you're Google searching for, where they pay for the first 4 results and you have to ignore those. Now we're looking for maybe 5 or 6, where the features are getting more specific, but you're designing the software and the process, and you're molding it to yourself. You're not going to the software saying, how should we do CRMs? Because they are not talking to you. They're trying to talk to everyone. And you are different, and you have a different way and approach of doing it, and that's why you exist. Okay, use the So That framework. You might be saying, but I don't know what I don't know. There's so many things that software could do for us. There's so many cool things out there. Stop it. Don't think like that. That's bad. Let me tell you why. Wouldn't it be cool if is the road to hell? It's the road to software hell. It will destroy you. Do not chase dream features. Don't do it. You're going to get bloat. You're going to get complexity. And what's going to happen is your team's going to have a hard time using it. We won't be able to function unless. That's where software starts. Software is at its best when it solves a real and present problem today. Here's what happens. You're going to find the real and present problem. We forgot about that donor. We lost $10,000, and I can't stop thinking about it. It's never going to happen again. Every month, we need 3-month reminders so that we never forget again. That is real, that is present, that is tangible, and now you've got a solution for it. Once you solve those problems, they're behind you. That problem solved. We got automated reminders. We're good to go. New problems come. Then you solve those. New problems come. Then you solve those. And then you continue doing that, and pretty soon you look back, and you're doing some real sophisticated stuff you would have never dreamed of because you solved the problem in front of you one step at a time. You can't chase dream features. You can only grow into them. You can grow into those one step at a time. All right. Abandon the hope of the one-stop shop. I love this idea. The one-stop shop, everything in one place, one software to rule them all. It's not going to work. I'll just tell you, it's never going to happen. I've been in software so long, it never happens. Here's why people want it. One decision, and all our problems are solved. Do you remember that map of all the software on the screen where you had to choose from 1,000? I love the idea of not having to choose that. Just choose one, and then you're done. And then everyone just uses that system. Here's the problem. You still have to make a bunch of decisions. So you buy that one-stop shop, then you have to choose how to configure it, which modules they're going to use, which modules actually integrate, which modules don't. You still have to make all the same decisions you would have had to make if you bought the software. You just have drastically fewer options now. And honestly, most one-stop shops, what you're guaranteeing is you're going to get a mediocre version of every other thing that it replaces. It's not quite as simple as that. The other reason people love the idea of the one-stop shop is because they're tired of looking for stuff. I get that. And then you say, we got the one-stop shop, now everything's in one place. I love the idea of it. Here's the problem. Y'all keep emailing each other documents. And the email's not in the one-stop shop. And then you keep downloading them and putting them on your laptop. If you would stop doing that, maybe we could get a one-stop shop. But because you won't, and no one ever will, is never going to happen. You're going to have to look wherever you find it. And so we have to figure out another way. That's not the way. Abandon the hope of it. Even if you're in the one-stop shop, just trust it's not going to work the way you thought. It could still work, but not the way you thought. And we got to abandon that hope. All right. We got to make the rules. There's upload buttons everywhere. Those 10 software, every single one of them wants you to upload their documents because they're trying to help. What uploads do is they make their products stickier because now you got something in there. And now you got to figure out how to get it out. If you ever want to leave, now you got to get all your documents out. And they're all like, give me your documents. We'll help you with those. Give me. They want your documents because now they're sticky. Well, now you can't find anything. You can't find anything anywhere when you need to find it. You got to make the rules. Where do we as a team put our stuff? Google Drive? Do we put it in the project management software? Do we put it in the CRM? Do we put our invoices in the accounting software, but our grant applications in the project management software? We got to make the rules, or the software is going to do it for us, and they're going to do a bad job, and your team is going to be running wild, and there's not going to be any clarity. None of these tools are coordinating because they don't need to. It's not in their interest. They care about their pinhole view of their users and the user experience. They don't know your tech stack. They don't know the 10 tools you use. That's not their purpose. So none of the tools are going to coordinate. And none of the tools are going to be like, you know what, actually for you, don't put your documents here. You're going to put them in Google Drive. You have to become the boss of your software. If you let it do the talking for you, it's going to really tear your organization. It's going to splinter your organization in a bunch of different ways. All right, let me give you an example of how you would go about becoming the boss of your software. When do we comment? This is like in a project management software. So project management software would be projects and then a bunch of tasks underneath them. You check off the tasks and then the project's done. When do you comment on a task versus send an email? Right now, usually, most organizations, it's just like whatever you feel. Just whatever you feel is good. You should decide that, probably. That's probably a good thing you should decide. How long should comments be? Some of you write 2-sentence comments. Some of you write 6-paragraph comments. And it's really hard to write a thread where someone's doing like, yup, and the other person's writing 6 paragraphs. That's really hard to know that. At 2 paragraphs, maybe you need to write a document and put that somewhere else. Do documents get uploaded on this tool, in this context, or do they get a different tool in a different context? If you don't answer these questions, it's going to be chaos, and you're going to be frustrated. And in this case, I don't actually think that's the software's fault. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying, if we don't do that, the software's it's not going to be good. All right, lastly, maybe next to lastly, manage expectations. There's this hype cycle. I think Gartner came up with it. Let me show you the chart. This is really common in technology. It's a macro phenomenon. There's a technology trigger. There's a peak of inflated expectations, a trough of disillusionment, slope of enlightenment, and a plateau of productivity. It's overly simplistic, but you can think of it with the internet boom. You can think of it with crypto, VR, People are debating where AI is on this right now. It's never singular, like there'll be multiple peaks and valleys, but this right here, the peak of inflated expectations to the trough of disillusionment, I think this is true in the macro, but I think it's also true in the micro. When you add a new software to your team, that's a technology trigger, and everyone's getting really excited, and you're building momentum around that software. There's a peak of inflated expectations, and then it doesn't meet them, guaranteed. If you're gonna buy software, it's not going to live up to your expectations, particularly if you're not specific enough on what you need it to do. That trough of disillusionment is where a lot of people get stuck. Here's what I think happens for a lot of nonprofits. This is the pattern that I'm seeing. They do the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and they're like, this software sucks, I'm out. Like, but look at this one. And then they go right back on to the next one. And you can do this cycle forever. There will always be another software. And if you can't get out of this pattern, you'll never get to productivity. And you do this 2 or 3 times, you're gonna burn out. You're gonna burn out and you're gonna throw your hands up and you're gonna give up on software entirely. And I've seen that, and I don't blame people for a second, because that is such a frustrating experience. So we have to manage people's expectations. Because it has technology in the name, it's easy to think this is a technical challenge. Software is not, it is an adaptive one. All right, so what if we take software seriously? I know some of you are like, I'm not that inspired. This sounds very frustrating. But what if we take it seriously? Let's use that same example of that nonprofit. $500,000 in revenue, 7 employees, a third of revenue from grants, donations, services, respectively. How do you run this organization in the 80s or then the 90s with none of this? What would that look like? It's a lot of faxes. Like, that's all I can think of is faxes flying around and phone calls, envelopes with cash, trips to the bank. Direct mail, stamps, everywhere. I think this nonprofit doesn't exist 30 or 40 years ago. This nonprofit exists because of software. Software creates the opportunity for nonprofits with this breadth and depth of offerings, applying for grants, hosting events, donors, small dollar donors online. It exists because of software. So I think software creates opportunities for us. Secondly, I asked a grant writer, what separates nonprofits, the nonprofits who get funded from the ones that don't? She answered very simply. She said, data. When she's writing grant applications, what funders want to see is demonstrated impact using data. They want to see the data that shows you're doing good in the world. They love the story. The story is really powerful, but they want to see the data that you can demonstrate. The thing that's underneath all of that software, databases. That's what's underneath all of that software. All the things you're doing is manipulating databases, and databases are just fancy spreadsheets full of rows and columns. I believe that nonprofits that embrace software and commit to demonstrating their impact through data are going to be the most effective and the most fundable organizations. All right, what is one thing today you can do to improve? Start with a software inventory. We've got a worksheet. We'll pass out the worksheet. We've got an online tool. You can do it. What's your tech stack? That big chart of all the software I showed, what does that look like for you? Ask yourself, what does each piece of software do for you? And who is in charge of it? Someone should probably be in charge of setting the rules for each of the software you have in your tech stack. Because if no one's in charge of it, it's just going to be chaos. So start with a software inventory. It should only take you an hour or 2. If you need help, go through your accounting software. You should have that. Go through accounting software, and you probably have something like subscriptions. And you can see all of your monthly subscriptions for all of these different software. And that will help you be a good starting place for having these discussions about how is software serving you.